Hosted by you/potential Jaguar 91. I read it often but needed to make an account different from my main. My marriage is seriously on the rocks, and although I've browsed here before, I never thought I'd have to post one day, but here we are. I'm 36M, and my wife is 28F. We've been married for 4 years, together for 6, and we have a 1-year-old daughter who is the light of my life. My wife is an amazing mother and partner. My own mother, on the other hand, is absolutely ridiculous, and my wife has made me realize over time that my relationship with her is not healthy. My mom tries to control everything, including our wedding, which I convinced my wife to suck up and go with my mom's ideas. She is still resentful of me for it. My mom's passive-aggressive behavior, basically since we started dating, has made my wife absolutely hate her. I'll admit I haven't been as firm with my mom as I should have been in the past. This brings us to yesterday. Our wedding anniversary was last night. We're a little tight on money right now, being new parents, and our jobs are not fantastic. So I suggested that a family friend watch our daughter, I buy us a nice bottle of wine, and we cook dinner and just relax. I could tell my wife was disappointed that we couldn't do anything bigger or better, but she agreed this was the best choice, and we settled on both being home from work at 6 p.m. I was headed home from work when I got a call from my mother asking me to come over because it was an emergency. I asked her what type of emergency it was, and she just started crying frantically and begging me to come over. It was already 5:30 p.m., but I live in a low traffic area, so I figured I would stop by and calm my mom down before I met my wife. When I got to my mother's house, she was literally sitting on the couch having a glass of wine and watching TV. I was livid. She was so calm too, not the frantic mess I had spoken to on the phone. I started pressing her about what the emergency was and reminded her that this was the night of my wedding anniversary. She said she had some house tasks for me to do that, in my opinion, she was 100% capable of doing herself. Things like washing the dishes, watering her houseplants, cleaning the gutters, etc. Definitely not emergency material. But she guilted me into doing them. She was literally screaming at me at one point that I was a bad son, and I texted my wife to let her know that I was going to be late because I was at my mom's house. She didn't respond to my text. Before I knew it, it was 7:30 p.m. My mom kept trying to put more tasks on me, but I put my foot down and let her know that I needed to get home. When I finally got home to my wife, she wasn't there. I was worried, so I texted and called her many times, no response. I was able to track her phone and found out that she was at her parents' house. They don't live far, around 20 minutes away. She finally got back at 11 p.m., and as I greeted her with a glass of champagne, she told me to save it for myself because she wanted a divorce. I was shocked and started breaking down. I asked her why, and she said that tonight was the final straw in a long list of times I've put my mother first. She said that she expected today, of all days, to be our one time together, but even then, my mom was able to intervene on our wedding anniversary. I asked her what I could do and begged her to go to counseling. She is refusing. I asked her if there is someone else. She said the someone else is herself, and that it's time for her to start working on herself and stop worrying about me always putting my mother first. She has since moved into the guest bedroom in our house and hasn't talked to me much this morning. I tried to kiss her on the way out to drop off our daughter before work, and she just moved out of my way. So, how do I save this sinking ship? I'm committed to doing everything for my wife to improve this, but she says that this is past fixing. I'm at a complete loss. I'm worried that she will see, or already has seen, a divorce lawyer, and I'd like to stop this in its tracks before it goes too far. I flared this as give it to me straight because I just need people to be as honest as possible with me right now. I know I messed up, but I also need to know how to fix this. Update 1 day later. First, I want to say thanks to everyone who took the time to respond. Some of the responses were brutally honest, but I did tag the flare as give it to me straight, so that makes sense. 1. Some people commented that my asking if there was somebody else my wife was seeing was inappropriate. I really don't see how it was inappropriate, but to each their own, and my wife definitely thought it was inappropriate too. That question ended up being one of the tipping point comments that led her to move into the guest room. I know I said I'd give her space, but the conflict was killing me. So yesterday, when she got back from work, I knocked on the guest room door and tried to get her to come down to the kitchen to talk to me, but she was still refusing to talk about all of this until she was ready. I asked her when she'd be ready, and she just shut the door in my face. 2. Late last night, my mom showed up unannounced, which is, unfortunately, something she does, and my wife answered the door. I could hear my mom asking my wife how our anniversary was. My wife called for me to come down and handle my mom, her exact words, and my mom started interrogating her about what handle meant. By the time I got down there, ready to defuse the situation, it was already too late. My wife had poked the bear, and my mom was laying into her verbally. I asked my wife what she had said to my mom. Stupid, I know, and she just went up to the guest room and slammed the door. I finally realized what was going on and asked my mom to leave, but she refused. I had to threaten to call the police before she finally left. 3. This morning, my wife packed her bags, a bag for my daughter, and left for her parents' house. I was surprised that she didn't even tell me beforehand. I was able to stop her and ask her what was going on as she was heading out the door, and she said she's had enough of the verbal abuse. She told me she's ready to find a partner who will stick up for her and her family, and that I will always put my mother first, last night being a prime example. She said this relationship cannot be salvaged and that she would be seeing a divorce lawyer ASAP. As a last-ditch effort, I asked her what I could do to fix this. She just shook her head at me and then left. I'm a mess. I've lost everything meaningful to me within the span of 48 hours. I keep calling and texting her, but I'm getting no response. I called one of my buddies to tell him what went down, and he's on his way now. When I told him everything that happened, his reaction was a mix of shock and congratulations, you played yourself. He called me denser than a block of bricks. I told him I still have some hope that this relationship can last, but he laughed and said I need to put that idea to rest. I know I've got things I need to work on, boundaries, for sure. My relationship with my mother, who I'm working on blocking on literally every avenue of communication I have. Myself. To be completely honest, I'm not a big believer in therapy, but I know I need it. I'm hoping it will make me a better person, and maybe if my wife sees me working on myself, there's still some hope. As for my marriage, there's a part of me that's still optimistic, but I know it will be hard for my wife to come back from this. As painful as it is, I just need to play the next couple of days, or weeks, or months, by ear and see what happens. Second update 18 days later. You all were right, my mother is toxic. Hello, it's me again. This will probably be the last time I post on here. My wife has officially collected all of her things, and my daughter's things, and moved back in with her parents. I made the dumbest move ever and stayed with my mom for a few days to collect my thoughts. It was dumb on a lot of levels, but I finally saw firsthand the abuse that my wife was receiving because now it was directed entirely at me. She also did some really weird things, like trying to snuggle me to sleep. One night I woke up, and she was snuggling me. I had to tell her to get back to her own bed. I realized how counterintuitive it was for me to be there, so I moved out one morning while she was sleeping and came back to my home. I went back through some responses on my first post and finally began to follow the advice. I've officially blocked my mother on everything and invested in a small home security system for my house. She's tried to show up a few times, but I've locked all of our gates, and she does not have a key. I also rekeyed the doors in our home just in case. I've had 2 therapy sessions, and I stupidly thought it would be a one and done type of thing. In my first session, I was given some really good advice and was told that if I'm just here to save my marriage, I should look elsewhere because I also need a lot of work. That really got me thinking. My therapist is fantastic too. As for my marriage, I don't know what's next. We are going through a trial separation at the moment, and she hasn't spoken to me much except to talk about our daughter. I'm also realizing that I may have been a bad husband, but I can still be a good father to my daughter. It's still tough. I feel immense guilt over everything that happened, not just to my wife, but to my mom too. It will take me a while to get her feelings out of my head and disentangle her from my life, but I'll admit I'm excited for this fresh start. If it doesn't work out with my wife, I can still be the best dad that I can be. Thanks for the help, guys, I really appreciate it. Edit. The amount of hateful comments I've gotten in my inbox, about how I'm a leech, how my wife was an idiot for getting with me in the first place, and how I'm a garbage person, is exactly why I didn't want to post here again in the first place. Third update 15 days later. Hi there, me again. What the hell are grandparents' rights, and why is my mother hinting at them? I don't know if this is more of an r/legal advice scenario, but the background at this point is that since I've cut off my mother from all avenues, she's decided to send snail mail to both me and my wife, with whom I am currently going through a trial separation. The return address was my mother's house, and the handwriting was hers. My wife and I decided to meet up to discuss the letters, and she and I both received different ones. I'm not going to go into details about mine because it was mostly come home to mama type crap, but my wife's letter came in a large envelope that was mostly unmarked. There was no postage on it and no evidence of it going through the post office, so she must have dropped it off herself. My wife is staying with her parents, and my mom knows the address through family gatherings, holidays, etc., but the handwriting matched, and she still wrote a return address on it. The letter itself included information about how my mom was thinking of pursuing grandparents' rights, but if that's not far enough, she'll have to get creative in order to spend time with our daughter. As for the grandparents' rights thing, my daughter is too young to have any type of serious relationship with my mom, but she has watched her on some occasions. My wife refused to let my mom have unsupervised visits when we were still together, but she did allow some supervised play. As for the creative thing, I'm not entirely sure what to think. It doesn't sound like a total threat to me, but it does sound super ominous. My wife is freaked out. I let her know that I'd support her in any way possible, but we honestly don't know where to go from here. Restraining order? Cease and desist letter? Should we just document that we received this in order to keep a paper trail but ignore the letter? I personally think we need to document this with the police. Fourth update 1 day later. Thanks everyone for your help the other day. I've blocked my mom on all communication, and so has my wife. We can also confidently say we've got everything secured, from my in-law's house to our pediatrician to my daughter's social security number. As for the threat, we are following through with legal proceedings with a lawyer after my mother's threat, but my wife, daughter, and I are doing okay and just taking it day by day, I guess. At the moment, I'm preparing for the worst from my mom. This morning, she attempted to see my wife at work, literally just showed up and asked to see her. When my wife's secretary refused, my mother demanded to see her, and it escalated to the point where they threatened to call the police. We are documenting everything and also looking into moving. The space from my mother would be good. I'm worried she will come to my work next, but I've told my boss about the situation, and he's pretty understanding, I guess as understanding as a boss can be. In the meantime, is there anything else I should do? A kind Redditor recommended we get the house CPS ready, and we are in the process of doing that. Better to be safe than sorry. Thanks again. It might have been a rough go around in the beginning, but I'm starting to see the light. My mother may have come between my marriage, but I refuse to let her hurt my family any further, especially since she has threatened to take my daughter away. 5th update 2 days later. Hi everyone, this will likely be my last post for the next few weeks. Nothing is wrong, but we're preparing for my wife's birthday, and since I messed up the anniversary, I really want to do something special. Plus, with Halloween close by, my wife and I are getting our daughter's costume ready, decorating the house, and generally just trying to do some festive fall things. I'm finding that I'm enjoying this time with my family a lot without the interference of my mother. This is how it always should have been. But my mother almost always finds a way to insert herself into what we are doing. Although we have remained no contact, she's starting to find ways to circumvent that, hence the story below, so I'm sure I'll have more updates. Here's my next question. My mom hasn't always acted sexual towards me, but my therapist has picked up on a few red flags that started in my teens and have carried into me being a man. The first one being the fact that my mom was snuggling me in bed when I moved in with her for a short amount of time. The second is that she can be touchy-feely with me in a way that I used to think was normal mother/son love but now I know is weird. Playing with my hair, excessively kissing my cheeks, you get the point. One time, she pinched my rear when she came and visited my daughter and told me to give her a piece of that sugar. At our wedding, she wore an extremely revealing dress, at least it wasn't white, and tried to get me to dance suggestively with her on the dance floor. I thankfully realized what was going on and did not go for it. I'm rambling at this point, but what I'm trying to say is that she did something not too long ago that takes the cake. While I was at work, I got an email from someone I didn't recognize, and it was tagged as an external server. We use Outlook, which isn't unusual since sometimes people will email and call to ask about our services. Plus, the subject line of the email said inquiry, and I could see a bit of the body copy asking about the types of services we offer. Well, to my surprise, this was a bait and switch. I opened the email to see the body copy, but underneath it, there were about 4 revealing pictures of my mother with a caption under each of them that said, "Where's my sweet boy?" This was definitely an email from my mom. I don't get sick often, but I started shaking and then had to go to the bathroom to throw up. Why on earth she would think this was acceptable is something I'll never figure out, but it began to register that she had just sent me a nude photo through my work computer and also through my work's internet. I'm thinking this was likely done on purpose to get me in trouble. Anyway, I forwarded the email directly to our lawyer and blocked the new email address from both my work and personal accounts. I then went to talk to my boss about it. He knows about my mom and her antics, and he said that he received an email from the same address accusing me of being unprofessional on site a few days ago. So yeah, I think this is a setup. My boss, thankfully, is understanding of the situation, or as understanding as a boss could be, and just deleted the email from my mom and let me get back to work. Did I do the right thing here? Also, I'm worried that my mom is having some sort of mental break, not worried for her, but for myself, my wife, and my daughter. My therapist calls it escalation. If I got explicit photos, I can't even imagine what's next. Is it time to call Adult Protective Services? Any advice would be appreciated. 6th update 13 days later. A quick update before we head to the mountains. My wife's birthday is this weekend, so we are about to go off the grid. I thought I'd update you all on the situation before we hightail it to nature. Nothing crazy has happened, thankfully, besides a few unmarked letters in the mail to both me and my wife, which we have made photocopies of for our personal records and then sent straight to the lawyer. Also, after speaking with my boss about the photos that were sent to me from her, I have decided to go the police route regarding the awful photos my mother sent me. Still no grandparents' rights papers yet, thankfully, again. I'm not sure if it will ever happen, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Some people have recommended that we get our house CPS ready just in case. We've got that handled if it ever comes to that. We are still absolutely no contact with my mother, regardless of her attempts to get in touch with us. Lastly, we are serious about moving and are considering viewing homes and apartments next week. However, my wife is still adamant that she does not want to jump ahead and assume we will stay together after this boils over. If we purchase or rent together and then decide to divorce or legally separate, that would bind us to a living situation that I don't think would be good for anyone involved, including our daughter. I respect her decision, and although it's not ideal, I agree that we need to let this settle and revisit the trial separation at a later date. So, things are slowing down a bit. I'm happy that life is returning to some semblance of normal. It's still a rough road, and I'm working on myself and my family every day. 7th update 6 days later. My mom has, I think, taken to try and catch us during shopping trips. How do I proceed? Basically, the title, Still no contact with my mom. Still not answering any of her attempted communication. It's not confirmed, but my wife has a hunch that my mom is now trying to confront us in public places, like when we go out shopping. It's happened 3 times over the past 2 weeks. At first, we thought it was coincidental, but since it's happened twice more, we're starting to feel a little concerned. An example, we go to a nearby grocery store that's close to our home but farther from where she lives. I'd say it's about 25 to 30 minutes from her house and also not the closest grocery store for her. Wednesday is our grocery shopping day since we both get off work a little early. My mom knows this, as sometimes she would ask me to get her something, and I'd take groceries out to her house. I know, my mom is fully capable of going grocery shopping herself. I thought I was being a good son, now I know it was manipulative. 2 days ago, we arrived at this grocery store and found my mom pacing around outside, looking like a crazy person. We decided to turn around and go to another grocery store. Again, I'm not a detective, but this seems suspicious to my wife and is starting to feel suspicious to me too. Are we overreacting here? A small part of me thinks we might be hypersensitive because of everything that's gone down, but between everyone telling me my mom is dangerous and wanting to protect my family, I just don't know what to believe anymore. Any advice is appreciated. 8th update 12 days later. Had to call for a wellness check on my mother. My mom still hasn't stopped sending us letters, but the biggest change is that now she sends some of them through the post office instead of just dropping them off in our mailbox, and they now also come with her address on the envelope. I don't know why she made this change, but it does make it easier for our lawyer to have verifiable proof that she's sending us this stuff. My wife sends her letters directly to our lawyer. It's always the same BS, how terrible my wife is, how she's a WHRE, how she hopes our daughter doesn't grow up and treat her like I treat my mom, etc. The only reason I opened my letter is because the envelope was thick, and it looked like there were pieces of fuzz coming out of it or something. I opened it to find several locks of hair and a letter that basically boiled down to "Look what you did to me." I took this to mean that my mother had some sort of mental break and cut off most of her hair. Some of the hair was short and rough, which my wife believes is undeniably pubic hair, which, if that's true, I'll excuse myself to go throw up. The letter also had what looked like drops of either red paint or dried blood on the corners. I'm sending all of this to my lawyer, but I immediately called the police to do a wellness check on my mother. At first, what she was doing was just annoying. Now this is veering into what I believe to be self-harm territory. I'm not sure if she's going through an actual mental break or just looking to seek attention, but it's better to be safe than sorry. She's still a human being, and even if she is crazy, I still want her to be safe. I'm starting to lose hope. Every time I think this is kind of over, my mom ramps up the crazy again. I'm pretty sure the only way out of this is if I file a restraining order or if she passes away. I don't see this going away anytime soon. I know it's only been about 3 months since the onset of this, but I don't know if I can go the rest of my life living like this. I now understand how my wife feels. I think a restraining order is the next step. As always, thank you for listening. 9th update 18 days later. Hello everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I thought I'd give a quick update on my mother. Without going into too much detail, she drove to our house one evening and had a psychotic break in front of our home that involved self-harm. It was serious enough for us to call the police, again, and she is now spending time at a mental facility. That's all I'll say on that matter. With grandparents' rights not really on the horizon anymore, my wife has approached me and said she still wants the trial separation and the divorce. She feels like these last 2 months or so, we have been playing house in order to keep up a good look in case my mother decided to pull something, and that she's put up with the crazy for too long. This is starting to impact her own mental health, so she has moved herself and our daughter back in with her parents for the time being and wants to discuss our options with our lawyer on Monday. So, I guess we will start that process soon. I can't say I'm not disappointed, but I also can't blame her. I asked her if all of the bad really outweighed the good, and she gave me the most stern look and said, "Our relationship has been almost nothing but bad," and walked away. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I know these are things I need to bring up to my therapist. Thank you for listening. 10th update 8 days later. I've learned that my mom views me as her husband. My therapist calls this emotional incest, although at times it has unfortunately crossed over into my mother actually wanting to get physical with me, such as her snuggling me in bed and sending me explicit photos, and in some cases some small sexual activity that I've repressed and rather not get into here. This is the first time I've actually written it out or said it out loud, besides with my therapist. Coming to terms that you've been SA'd by your own mother when you were a minor does not feel great. I don't know how long it'll take me to work through these feelings, but please know I am working on them. I've learned that because my mom views me as her husband, she sees herself in constant competition with my wife. My therapist has pointed out that my mom views herself as the mistress, which may explain the photos. I've learned that my mom has very likely never properly grieved the death of my father. I've learned that almost every girlfriend I've had, including my wife, has never been good enough for my mom because only she believes that she's good enough for me. My therapist believes that at the risk of protecting me after my father passed away that my mom went ballistic and turned me into her husband. My therapist calls it a sonsman. I've learned that years of mental and emotional manipulation on my mom's side has gotten me here. Up until I had my first reality check, I really did believe all of this was annoying, but normal and just how she is. I still feel slightly guilty over everything that has happened, but my guilt has turned into anger. I feel like I've been robbed of a normal life. However, being in therapy has opened my eyes to what can happen next though. I'm only in my 30s. I still have time to live a great life and be a great dad to my daughter. As always, thanks for listening. I'm always thankful for the advice and the support. As you've probably guessed, my normal meter is still a bit off, so it's good to hear other perspectives. 11th update 22 days later. My wife and I decided to go through with a trial separation. She and our daughter are at her parents' house for the time being, while I am at our home. It's the most awful feeling, and I've never felt this empty before. Divorce is coming. I guess I should start calling her my ex-wife. I'm continuing with counseling so I can work through not just my personal feelings but also what the next steps are going to be. I've always wanted to move out of state and maybe try out a new career, but I don't want to be far from my daughter. We'll see how it goes. I'd also like to thank all of you for your well wishes on my last post. I tried to respond to all of them, but I really just couldn't. I break down crying every time I see support. They're happy tears, but they're also a reminder of what could have been. Thank you for listening. 12th update 1 month later. Ex-wife has informed me she is going to begin dating other people. I guess I should have seen it coming, but I almost wish she hadn't told me. She said it was more of a heads up in case I see her out and about on a weekend or something. We're separated, so it's not against the rules for her to date or anything, and we're in a no-fault state for the divorce that's inevitably coming our way. I'm not in a place emotionally where I'm ready to date. I'm not even close. But hearing that she'll be meeting up with an old flame for dinner next weekend rocked me to my core. It means I really can't get her back. I did try one last time, and it did not go well. She said she's done with coming second to my mother and now second to the drama that's been going on in our lives, and that she doesn't want to raise our daughter in an unhealthy environment. Understood.